Yo, what's going on, guys? Hope you're well. This is one of the best albums I've heard this year. That is why it is a highlight video on this channel. I just couldn't not share it. I've heard a little bit about these guys. I've heard some of their songs before, but the context in which I was just missing context without the album to fully appreciate this. I lost my mind to this album this morning. It's fully instrumental. It's only like a half an hour long. It's ridiculous. If you like Tool, if you like Animals as Leaders, and if you like Polyphia and probably a few other bands, but they're the main three that I really noticed in this album, then definitely check out this highlight video. If you are familiar with the band and you want to see my full reaction, the album reaction is already uploaded to Patreon. I've been getting through as many 2023 releases as possible. I've put out so much content on Patreon over the last few days or weeks, and I will be doing that for the next few months as well until the year's out. So guys, if you want to suggest an album, the only way to actually suggest an album is via Patreon. So let me know over there. And yeah, otherwise, enjoy this video. Like I said, Discord link is in the description as well. Get involved there as well. That's free. So yeah, otherwise, enjoy this highlight video. This album is nuts. Let's go. We have the prog scarf in anticipation that this is going to be a prog album, but again, I don't really know. Oh man, this is pretty cool already. It was giving me Mad Fear Inoculum vibes there. Again, I can't help myself from bringing up some form of Tool comparison, but I gotta call it how I hear it. Now it's like an Animals as Leaders feel to it, that like wormhole. That's so sick. It's kind of giving me like Russian Circles vibes a little bit with some of that wacky like production going on in the back, the little very industrial. It almost just doesn't even need vocals when there's like that much melody in the riff. Oh, and this goes into Arrival, which again I have heard, but I only heard the first 40 seconds again there before we started. So I need to listen to it a few more times, or I need to listen to it again the full way through. But you know, from the first time I would have listened to it, I added it to the playlist, so I obviously liked it. That's gonna go on the playlist, by the way. Fuck me, that was good. So sick. So much going on, but we'll talk about it a little bit later on, because it's a short enough album, so I probably don't need to keep pausing it. Again, I hate to say it, but I get like Danny Carey vibes from Tool. I think it's just the tone of it. This is some like police chase type music. It's fucking sick. So much energy, so high octane. Okay, I'm gonna quickly pause because I believe this is what Marius was saying on Discord last night, was that, you know, a lot of the stuff that's going on that you hear in the mix that sounds almost like post-production that can't be done in a live scenario. I believe these guys are well capable of playing it all live. So there's a lot of like foot pedals and shit going on, a lot of different effects being phased in. So that just makes it a little bit more, you know, interesting to listen to when you hear it in the fully produced like studio version, because you can imagine it live. Well, I guess I can't actually imagine it live, but there's the fact that I can't even imagine it being played live, but they can play it live is just so intriguing to me. It's like a lot of Steven Wilson stuff. You know, you hear Steven Wilson's new album and you're like, okay, yeah, this is mental. But then you actually watch him play live and you're like, he's actually making all of these noises live. It's mental. So it's kind of the same vibe. Okay, I'm bringing it back. That little part there. It's just, again, there's so much melody in it. It's like kind of untraditional melody. Like it's melody within the actual instruments. Like that's something when I hear it, I kind of like instantly want to mime that sound with my mouth. So it's just so catchy, even though there's no lyrics. It's fucking weird. But all this is gorgeous. Again, this sounds like Fear Inoculum. It sounds like Tempest by Tool. I think I remember saying this on stream when I heard it. Again, that kind of like distorted fuzzy tone again, very Adam Jones. Sorry to say it, I hate to be the Tool guy. Fucking yes. That is so sexy. Oh my goodness. That's going on playlist. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, there's so much layers, there's so much layers. And then the little that chord being played after, it's just so unnoticed. This is such nerd music. I'm so happy. This is fucking amazing.
It was my escape.
So unpredictable as well. I thought they were going to hit us with another fucking elephant. Why was that good?
And it's a repetitive pattern, which is very destructive.
This is masterful. What the fuck? This is just all playlist, isn't it? It's just there's not even a point of liking it, because this is an album that you throw on start to finish and just levitate for half an hour, you know? My god. The like subtlety of the harmonic notes that are being played by that lead guitar is just like the album feels liquid is probably the best way to describe it. It just flows like water. It knows when to get like intense and heavy, and it knows when to just chill the fuck out. So structurally, compositionally, it's fucking flawless so far. I know I always harp on about the Tool comparison. I'm actually like reserving myself. I'm pulling back a little bit from actually like saying how much something sounds like Tool all the time, because I always get flame grilled like this guy just only compares everything to Tool. But it's just one of those bands that were the early stages of my development in like listening to like modern metal and like progressive metal. So Tool is always a band I'll harp back to because I've just heard so much of their discography in such detail so many times. So I've just, you know, and Tool are such a fucking influential band as well, so it's not far-fetched to compare a lot of bands to Tool. But now I feel justified because I've just peeked my eye at the last track, which is coming up after this, and it features Justin Chancellor. And who is Justin Chancellor? No one even mentioned this to me. Justin Chancellor is the bassist of Tool. So fuck all of you who are probably like, oh, stop comparing it to Tool. I'm justified now, and now I'm happy. This album is perfect for me. It has Justin Chancellor at the end. Oh my god. I just seen it there. No one mentioned this to me. What the fuck? Playlist. Don't care. Playlist. It's in. These motherfuckers have the key to my soul right now. Oh my god, they have everything. They're doing everything right. Like I said, it's just peaking at the right moments, getting heavy. Am I exaggerating right now? Am I fanboying a little bit too hard? This is fucking unbelievable. I've got chills everywhere! You know, when you reach that point of euphoria in a song where, like, they've already made you, like, peak. I don't want to use the word climax because that's a bit weird, but, like, every little additional sound they put in right now is just icing on the cake. I've already climaxed, is what I'm trying to say, okay? I'm trying not to be crude about it, but... I needed this album in my life this morning. I genuinely needed this. Oh. This feels so much like Russian Circles. That Gnosis track that Russian Circles did, it has that same feel. The bass has already been like so prominent and really defined in this, so I don't really know how Justin's going to get involved. Maybe he'll have like a little bass solo or something, I don't know. I would like to think with my experience with listening to Tool that I'll be able to pick out exactly when it's Justin playing. Do you know what's so sick about this as well? The fact that they got a bassist to feature on an album, like that is just so fucking prog. Like not getting like a frontman or a guitarist or something like that, but to bring a bassist onto a track is fucking cool. Honestly, feels like more like it's Adam Jones featuring right now, I'm not gonna lie. But again, I'm not really a bass player, so I don't really know what to look out for nuance-wise. But to me, like if it didn't say Justin Chancellor, I personally wouldn't have been able to pick that one out. I'm not gonna lie. Okay, we're back. I still need to think of a rating in my head, but what I'll do is I'll go through my points that I have on a notepad here. So I'm gonna be looking at this side of the screen here if you're wondering where I'm looking at, because the notes, there's a lot of them, because there's so much to talk about with this album. But we'll start off with the flow of the album, flawless. A lot of that is to do with the actual time frame of the album, which we'll touch on after this, like being 33 minutes long. I thought that was excellent, but we'll touch on that as one of the last points. But the flow of the album was absolutely perfect to me. It got crazy when it needed to get crazy, and it got real like melodic and slow and ambient and atmospheric when it needed to as well. There was never any moments when I was listening to it and I was thinking, oh, they've lost me here a little bit. They just had me at their mercy for the entirety of the album, which was a massive tick for me. So as for the bands that I would compare this band to, I would say Animals as Leaders, Tool, and then Polyphia. I think they absolutely have their own really fresh sound, and it is very recognizable, but it's hard to, I guess, look away from the fact that there is elements, especially in the heavier moments. I think they're very like Animals as Leaders. In some of the more easy listening, chilled out moments, it's very Polyphia. And then I think across the board, when it gets into the more solo driven stuff from a guitar standpoint, it's very Adam Jones-esque, and then Justin Chancellor-esque from Tool on the bass, and even Danny Carey a little bit. So there's all like Tool influences written all over this, I think, as a more general overlook. But I think Polyphia when it gets into the more technical stuff, and then Animals as Leaders when it gets into the very heavy stuff, it kind of has that like thumpy feel to it. So really fucking sick, like 3 unbelievably talented bands. So to be in the same ballpark as those is unbelievable. So that brings me on to the guitar work, which was absolutely S tier. Musicianship across the board was absolutely phenomenal, but like being someone who is a guitar player, obviously I'm gonna naturally enjoy listening to the guitar a little bit more, and it's just so nuanced in this. So yeah, again, nuance all over the place with this record, ranged from extremely delicate harmonic accents which gave the flow of the album a real liquid feel, to the absolute opposite end of the spectrum with the stank face inducing riffs. You've seen my reactions throughout the entirety of the thing, lads. It was absolutely from like, if we have the spectrum here of like beautiful, like nuanced technical riffs, that's one end of the spectrum. And then we have the real heavy stuff. They covered everything in between so well. It just felt like such a full album. And to be able to do that in such a short period of time as well is absolutely amazing. Again, hats off to the composition of the album as well. It just flowed so beautifully. Didn't even notice the absence of vocals, which is a huge thing to me. The music was so captivating without it. So a problem that I have with a lot of these progressive bands in the, I guess, instrumental bracket of the scene is that they either go on for too long, where they do like 40 or 60 minute albums where I just feel like the actual content isn't good enough to keep me captivated. I don't think that, you know, lyrics and vocals are necessarily the end all be all. Like we've just seen the perfect example here of how it can be done and still be interesting. But the majority of the time, I'd say 70% of the time, I find myself towards the end of instrumental albums just being bored. You know, that's just how it is. I know a lot of people might agree with me. A lot of people might disagree with me, but I think for the most part, instrumental albums aren't really my cup of tea. But this one is probably one of the better instrumental albums, if not the best instrumental album I've ever heard. And I would definitely prefer to be longing for more as opposed to sitting there and, you know, thinking, Jesus, this album is just going on, dragging and dragging. I would actually say that this album could be another 10 minutes long and I'd still be completely captivated by it because it was just that good. So that's just a very, very big positive point for me, is that they just kept it so concise, but also it makes it like strategically, I think it was just a perfect approach to it, because they have part 1, which is obviously in the title of this album, and then we have part 2 coming in 2024. So not only does it build the hype for that album, you can also kind of view them as 2 separate projects, although they're like supposed to be the same thing. I don't know how strategic and like planned out that was, or maybe they just didn't have time and they needed to get one part of it out. I'm assuming it was more of a strategic thing, but I think they've absolutely nailed the delivery of the actual, I guess, rollout of this album. Anyway, now obviously I don't know what part 2 is going to sound like, but these guys are absolute wizards across the board from musicianship standpoint. So I'd like find it hard to believe that they'd somehow fuck up part 2 when part 1 is that good. So production was absolutely immense. Some really like subtle details which complemented the insane musicianship as opposed to like drowning it out. Some bands go down the real like modern production route where they add in all this cool stuff after, which I really love. I love all that experimentation, but sometimes it can ruin the actual musicianship with it. At the end of the day, I think a lot of prog fans are there for, you know, they want to hear the guitars, they want all the mix to sound like still somewhat real and not like too far gone where it's robotic. And this, I think they just nailed it. There was beautiful examples of this. Again, I could touch on many examples throughout the entirety of the album, but just listening back a few more times, There's beautiful examples of this in the intro track. Really small details, such as like the industrial hammer, I want to call it. I don't know exactly what it is, but it sounds like a hammer hitting a table with like a lot of effects on it. That sound like offset the rhythm of the heavy guitars in the breakdown, which again are kind of like that Animals as Leaders feel. So there's a real heavy breakdown, but then in the like pocket of space in between the breakdown moment, there was this like almost anvil or hammer, like industrial sound going on as well. So that was just another like, I guess really, really fucking cool moment in the production that was so subtle, but just gave the track so much more life and just made it feel like so much more full of character, you know? Again, I've already kind of touched on the album length, but again, my gripe with these instrumental bands sometimes is that their albums fail to keep my attention for 40 to 60 minutes that they run for. This album could have even run longer as I was so captivated by the music, despite it being purely instrumental. And again, I'd rather be longing for more than wishing the album would have just ended. So that brings me to the rating portion of the album. I liked 6 of the 7 tracks. Track number 7, I would say my only gripe with that is that I just didn't feel like I noticed the Justin Chancellor feature at all. Again, I'm not a bass player, but I don't feel like I necessarily have to be a bass player to notice or not notice that Justin's feature didn't have like a real Tool nuance to it, especially because a lot of the album did have a Tool feel to it. It wasn't as if, you know, it felt that like much like it had his stamp on it. Now, I'm sure from like the back end side of things, you'd probably be able to see exactly what he's inputting. Maybe he's just doing the bass for the entirety of the album. I'm not entirely sure, but I was kind of expecting maybe like a standout moment. But I think that's really cool that Nightverse has got him on an album. You know, I think they've gotten him on before. I was just doing some Googling before I jumped into the review portion, but absolutely fantastic album. Again, the only reason I didn't like that last track I didn't add to the playlist, it just doesn't really feel like a playlist track, but it was still a perfect, I guess, ending to a almost, I would say, flawless album. I don't really see what's wrong with this. So for that reason, it being somewhat flawless, I will give this album a 9.4 out of 10. I just don't see why else I would rate it any lower. Absolutely amazing. Definitely in contention for album of the year for me, for sure. Probably a bit of a dark horse for a lot of people. I'm not sure a lot of people have heard about this album because it's an instrumental album. I don't know how much appeal this has to the masses, but for me, absolutely beautiful. Really, really needed this type of music today because I am a little bit fatigued by all of the samey metalcore stuff across the board that I've been listening to. So this kind of brought me right back to the early days of discovering a lot of these prog bands and really getting into it and getting those goosebumps and the feels all over. So guys, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear your input and your feedback. Leave a like in the video if you did enjoy, it'd be much appreciated. And I'm signing out. Look after yourselves. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.